15. Theological time. The more explicitly time is seen as a theological concept, the more clearly does man's action in history gain focus and direction. What in humanistic hands became the doctrine of progress is, in origin, a theological view of time based upon the doctrine of the creation mandate and man's duty to serve the kingdom of God. This view has come slowly into focus because the influence of Hellenism led to a separation of mind and body. In terms of this, mind, spirit, and ideas were relegated to eternity as their proper realm. This idea is still with us, and men within the Church see man sometimes as an eternal being in the making. The body and matter were relegated to the material and temporal realm, to space and time, an ostensibly inferior realm. Hence, the proper goal of man was seen as transcendental, something God never mentioned to Adam. The vision of God became central, therefore, to the life of faith. Asceticism and monasticism were means for the abandoning of the temporal and material in favour of the eternal. In some ascetics, even communion was avoided. As Kirk noted, asceticism demands that we deny ourselves all good things of life. The Eucharist is a good thing. Therefore, we must achieve merit by abstaining from it. Devotional books were not written for Christians living in the world. For many centuries, the Christian devotion and piety meant monasticism. The world of space and time was the lesser world. The godly man was thus supposed to contemplate eternity and look forward to putting on eternity. The Bible speaks rather of putting on incorruption and immortality, that is, deathlessness. The regular clergy was the monastic. It was regular because it was under the rule of an order, a rule which separated it from the world. The secular clergy was in the world, and hence was, for some time, regarded as being on a lower level. The secular clergy gained the ascendancy finally, in part by adopting sacerdotal celibacy and separating themselves from the world, and, in part, because the view of time was changing. The vision of God was still the focus, but there was, with it, the mundane desire to create a social order dedicated to it. With Protestantism, the value of time was enhanced. The kingdom of God came more into view in terms of history and time. Man enters the kingdom of God by God's sovereign grace and mercy. Man, then, must work to further God's dominion over the earth by developing its implications for every area of life and thought. In this view, time is all-important and irreplaceable. The great Puritan compliment was to speak of a man as a redeemer of time, one who used time wisely. Charles Chauncey told Ezra Stiles that Cotton Mather was such a man. He was the greatest redeemer of time I ever knew. Cotton Mather could, by the age of 12, read Virgil in Latin, Homer in classical Greek, and the New Testament in Koine Greek. By 14, he was writing in Hebrew and mastering sciences. He could write in 7 languages, and his works include one each in Spanish, French, and Iroquois. He published 300 volumes and has 2 large and still unpublished works. Benjamin Franklin's Proverbs are secular forms of Cotton Mather's teachings and his Essays to Do Good. American Protestantism especially stressed the value of time in such a hymn as, "Work, for the night is coming." That is, use time as good stewards of a wealth from the Lord. The time before death is limited. Hence, work and save time. Hence, too, the American haste. Garrett wrote of the American zeal to save time, Yet, after they had performed this incredible feat, after they had bound their continent together with bands of steel, and it was entirely safe, still their feud with time went on. When they were 50 million, then 100 million, and already the richest people in the world, still their minds were obsessed with time-saving inventions of method, device, and machine, as if they knew how much more there was to do and were fearful that they could not get it done in time. This is what made American industry supreme in all the later phenomena of mass production. Other people had machines that were just as good, and had them first. Other people knew the methods too, and were welcome to come and look. But they worked in another dimension of time. Here, the machine was not to save labour. It was to save time. Many inventions have had as their motivation man's laziness and his desire to avoid some degree of his work. American inventiveness has had as its motive the desire to accomplish more work. This Protestant American view of time, in secularized form, led to the easy predominance of, quote, Protestants, end quote, over others. Thus, in New Orleans, this fact was basic to the triumph of the Know-Nothing Party, which was anti-foreign and anti-Catholic. The Creole, or French-Spanish element, with its old-world orientation, had a contempt for the American fervour, its time-saving ways, its strict schedules, and the like. The Americans similarly had a horror for the Creole ways. In time, as Protestantism in America became diluted, its insistence on the value of time became Yankee thrift and pragmatism. It led to a contempt of contemplation, which led to the rise of American intellectuals, who, as the new contemplatives, the monks of humanism, in turn despised the material and temporal world. Soon, however, even the men of the world, products of these new schoolmen, came to despise time and the clock, and to view their older attitude towards time as neurotic. In the 19th century, however, the Protestant American view of time formed the nation. A visitor such as de Tocqueville saw at once how important time was to American theology, commenting, "In the Middle Ages, the clergy spoke of nothing but a future state. They hardly cared to prove that a sincere Christian may be a happy man here below. But the American preachers are constantly referring to the earth, and it is only with great difficulty that they can divert their attention from it. To touch their congregations, they always show them how favourable religious opinions are to freedom and public tranquillity, and it is often difficult to ascertain from their discourses whether the principal object of religion is to procure eternal felicity in the other world, or prosperity in this." As de Tocqueville noticed, among the Americans, all honest callings are honourable. For a man, however wealthy, to avoid work was regarded as so evil a use of life and time that rich Americans who had no desire to work went to Europe, where they find some scattered remains of aristocratic society, among which idleness is still held in honour. In Europe, work with a view to profit was despised. In the United States, professions are more or less laborious, more or less profitable, but they are never either high or low. Every honest calling is honourable. These views had their origins in English Puritanism, which, while failing to an extent in England, triumphed in America. Baxter had declared in the Christian Directory, 1678, "It is action that God is most served and honoured by. Time and space are not to be despised, and mind or thought is to be directed towards dominion in this world of time and space as man's only possible world. Such a view is directly opposed to the Kantian and Hegelian views of man's autonomy, which lead to a hatred of time and to anguish because of time. Salvation is then from time, a conclusion reached by a Japanese professor of philosophy and religion and an ostensible Christian. According to Hatano, the accomplishment of salvation, which is the perfect deliverance from sin, time and death, can be found only after death or after the end of time. The Bible declares that salvation is from sin and death to the service of God, not from time. Salvation is in time, and time is not something to be destroyed like sin and death, but to be redeemed and made a means of exercising godly dominion. Man's life is inseparable from time. To reject time is to reject life and salvation.